Greetings, fellow cat bus enthusiasts. Tiki here.
And Blue Dragon 5.
And that's right. Go ahead and hop a ride on that most eloquent of feline vehicles because we are taking a one-way trip to talk about My Neighbor Totoro for the 30th anniversary of its Japanese release. Although technically, Dragon, it came to the States in 1993. So technically, this is like the 30th anniversary of the English release and the 35th anniversary of the Japanese release.
Are you sure it wasn't 90? It was 93?
I don't know it. I know that the dub that exists now with Dakota Fanning and Elle Fanning.
Yeah.
That was 2002. Actually, come to think of it, so there's this is the thing with Miyazaki and with movies from Japan and why we don't
It's
usually
hard to do the anniversaries for the Miyazaki.
right.
There's a lot of versions of it, like a lot of anime things.
Because like Dakota Fanning and Elle Fanning, like Dragon, they were not alive in 1993. I know that much. So like I don't know. There's definitely but I do know that it came to the States in 93. So I'm thinking that it was because clearly Disney had a big hand in bringing a lot of the I'll just go ahead and I do obviously have background on this Dragon. First of all, let's just kind of say our initial thoughts on it. And I will say I wish I grew up with this movie because I think I would appreciate it more if I did. This is the second time I've watched it, and it's cute. It's enjoyable. It's a very nice kind of slice of life, if you will. But having said that, Dragon, I've actually been on a kick with another Japanese director, kind of like people are calling him the spiritual successor to Miyazaki. He's got a movie in theaters right now, so I've been marathoning him. Compared to his work, compared to some of Miyazaki's other work I've watched recently, like Princess Mononoke, this isn't great. But again, it's like it's beloved and it's got some really interesting backstory to it. And, like I would say this is the closest thing that Miyazaki has come to like a full-blown Disney movie. So I don't know, Dragon. I know that you're not exactly the highest on it either. And I'm going to cite one thing here, Dragon, that I'm sure we can probably break down as we go along. But watching this movie as an adult, yeah, it's a real issue. Elle Fanning is May in this movie. We got a real DW on our hands, don't we?
You mean the DW from Arthur, right?
Yes.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I don't think as bad. But...
Dragon, on this particular rewatch, I was getting real annoyed with May, man.
Yep.
But what say you?
Yeah, so My Neighbor Totoro, it's a special film for the Ghibli. Essentially, I've always meant to do a proper deep dive on Ghibli from start to finish, but I've never been able to fully accomplish that. I've seen basically some of the greatest hits of Ghibli and a few of the ones on the side too, like the Borrower's remake. Well, not the remake, the Borrower's adaptation that they did. Which title I'm blanking on, right?
The Secret World of Arrietty.
Right, Arrietty, yes. So essentially, this, from what I understand, is their Toy Story. This is kind of like the iconic go-to. Heck, Totoro even shows up in Toy Story 3.
He does.
So the film is very clearly important, and it's not one that I've gone back to often. I've always recognized the iconography of it, and it's I feel it's when I go back to this movie, it's reminiscent. It has like a reminiscent feel of kind of the Disney Goodwill Tour films, like the Saludos Amigos and.
That's an interesting comparison. Yeah,
I feel that way because this movie really. I'm sure you can say this with a number of Miyazaki films, but interestingly, in other Miyazaki films, you're not strictly limited to this. Like one of the ones I'll bring up momentarily, but this movie in particular feels like it's a celebration of kind of kind of casual Japanese lifestyle and culture, like the majority of the Ghibli stuff, I imagine. And this one directly, had Miyazaki's hands in it, both directing and writing, and it's like an OG, like Miyazaki there from kind of the ground up sort of era. I appreciate the simplicity. I appreciate the charm. I appreciate the subtext. I don't think it held up as much as I hoped story wise, compared to something like, for me, I think probably my favorite. Mind you, I've not seen every single Miyazaki film. From what I've seen, though, for me personally, Porco Rosso is still my favorite. I love that movie very much. Mm-hmm. And to me, I don't think we've kind of hit that mark.
That was my favorite up until I saw Princess Mononoke. So.
Which that's a very fair point. I mean, I have to rewatch Mononoke to see how I feel about in comparison to Porco Rosso. Which again, that one, for example, technically that's a little bit more Italy, celebration of Italy, than it is a celebration of Japanese culture.
Of course, so and of flying machines too. Big old flying machine movie for Miyazaki.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll get to it's like a little Easter egg of that later in this film. But regardless, this film it's a pleasant film. I think the best way to summarize Totoro is it's a perfect Miyazaki icebreaker. It's the icebreaker of the Miyazaki films. Like, oh, you seen Totoro? Yeah, I've seen Totoro. Oh, goody. Let's talk Miyazaki. That's sort of where this film to me it's that I love you and I, but me especially, I thrive in mundanity. I do. I love it. A slice of life. Like, cut me a slice of that pie, man. I'm down. I'm all for it. But I think it was a little imbalance between our story and between our mundanity. And I can see what he's going for. I can absolutely see what he's going for. I think there were a few kind of early era, we're feeling out what we can do in the medium and just kind of like standing out from the rest. And I feel there were a few story things that maybe 35 years later, looking back on, I wonder if Miyazaki would rethink or not, knowing where he's gone with the rest of his film catalog or not. I wonder. I'm not saying it's necessarily a flaw. I'm not necessarily saying it makes the film bad or anything, but I'm saying this story-wise compared to Porco Rosso, I think there's definitely a diverging kind of thing there. But this thing is a classic. It's a titan, and again, it's very much like the icon of the studio.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got Richard's Victims. Again, a very sketchy username. Great movie, terrible neighbor. Also,
he never returned that umbrella.
He's been watching through. I guess he's been watching through the Studio Ghibli movies. He says his favorite one is Dragonflies. I assume you're talking about Grave of the Fireflies, which I will be mentioning very shortly because it's actually pretty pivotal to the development of this movie. So Dragon, just jumping into the development of this movie. As you know, this was back in the early days of Studio Ghibli. This was way before they became a household name.
So this was not their first film, right?
No. Their first film was technically a Lupin the Third film, believe it or not.
Oh, really? That was that?
Yes. It doesn't count as like a Studio Ghibli, like it's not in the canon, but that is technically his first directorial work.
Right.
But no, his first film was Nazca in the Valley of the Wind. Castle in the Sky, I believe, was before this, but this was pretty early on. But it was also around the same time that we had another very prominent person in the realm of Studio Ghibli. God, I'm sorry. The guy who directed Grave of the Fireflies. I want to get his name right. So let me look his name up really quick. Takada, I think, is it, but I just want to make sure. Oh, sorry. Takahata. All right. I'm sorry, Dragon.
It's going to be a long podcast, folks.
So Iso Takahata was also coming into the rising up the ranks within Studio Ghibli. And Dragon, as you know, he releases around the same time. He's not releases, but is developing Grave of the Fireflies, which is one of the more hard-hitting Studio Ghibli movies ever. One that I still have not had the balls to actually watch, to tell you the truth. I know I need to one day, but it's it's such a fucking tragic movie. I just don't have the stomach for it. It's like watching Schindler's List or something. It's literally like the Japanese equivalent to that. But Miyazaki got really inspired by Grave of the Fireflies, and he essentially wanted to set out to create something that had the same impact as Grave of the Fireflies, but, you know, would leave you feeling good, almost kind of like a yin to the Grave of the Fireflies yang. So famously, Totoro and Grave of the Fireflies were double features with each other when they opened. In Japan, and I'm pretty sure in the States too, they were very much linked with each other. But yeah, indeed, like you said, this was his real kind of like trying to stake his claim in the game of animation in a big way, bigger than we had seen before. A direct quote from him is that he wanted to create a movie that would entertain it, touch its viewers, but also stay with them long after they have left the theaters. And so a lot of the themes of the movie, the development of My Neighbor Totoro, actually, like, weirdly enough, the thing that I am going to compare it to most of all is actually the development of The Legend of Zelda Dragon, weirdly enough, because in both of these properties, you have Miyazaki and Miyamoto basically wanting to recreate their childhood home and sense of adventure and sense of nostalgia. So Legend of Zelda, very much based on the forests and the woods that Miyamoto would explore in his childhood. Miyazaki kind of took that a little bit of a step further, because with Totoro, it's an exploration. He kind of used that as sort of like a jumping off point with the nostalgia and the sense of adventure. It's very much kind of like got an E.T. vibe a little bit, with like, you know, the whole vibe of like you're making like a really grand adventure out of like a few acres of forest, essentially. But he kind of used that as a springboard to talk about some greater Japanese social issues, mostly a big theme in a lot of Japanese anime and especially movies, which is kind of like the tension between rural Japan and modern, like, hyper technologically advanced Japan. And this movie is very much meant to be a kind of like a plea for the kind of essentially the preservation of the more rural side of Japan. And that was really Miyazaki's main goal, was to get people to kind of like appreciate that kind of like the farmer culture and that Japanese, like, you know, the future and the technology and everything is great, but it's a movie very much about the Japanese roots. Let me see. There's a direct term for it. Animism. It is a major theme. It is the belief that objects, places, creatures all possess a spiritual essence. And so that was very much at play, kind of like this kind of like very, very sort of fundamental sort of, you know, old school feudal Japanese mythology surrounding the forest. And it's very, if you think about it, it's very similar to the messages of Princess Mononoke about, you know, kind of like Princess Mononoke is also very much a movie that is celebrating that side of Japan, wanting to preserve it. Just obviously Princess Mononoke is, you know, a lot higher stakes, a lot bigger scope. So in a lot of ways, I think that this was a kind of a big stepping stone, obviously to Princess Mononoke, but also just to you know, just the States in general, because as you said, like, this movie like exploded after it got to the States, and after that it was pretty much just not every Miyazaki movie was a big hit in the States. Like, this pretty much led the way to Kiki's Delivery Service, which then led the way to Princess Mononoke, which then led the way to Spirited Away. And then after Spirited Away, that was kind of like the big watershed moment where everything that Miyazaki did would hit in the States. But it was a little bit of stepping stone. There were certainly movies in between the benchmarks along the way. You know, movies like Porco Rosso, for example, that were released in the States, not necessarily big cultural impacts, but at the very least, this was a big stepping stone to getting to where Studio Ghibli is right now. All right. I have not watched this this horror film you were referring to, Richard's Victim. I have not. All right, so yeah, Dragon. That's my backstory.
Okay.
All right. So, where do you want to start?
Well, I mean, I guess we probably just kind of lay out our initial premise here. So, of course, premise of My Neighbor Totoro, you have the Kusakabe family moving to a house in the Japanese countryside, so they can be closer to the family's mother, who's staying in a hospital right now. So it's a natural start. I think it's a real natural start for a slice of life kind of. It's kind of Americana overseas. It feels like that's kind of like it's kind of the homespun quality of what you were. It's a travel log. I think it's a nice way of starting our story in which we're kind of like this little road trip, getting from point A to point B. We're kind of schmoozing the neighbors a little bit. In kind of a nice way, and like inviting them over. And of course, that's how we get Granny in the movie and everything. So we start off quite nicely.
This has some of our people in it, Dragon, as far as voice acting goes. We got, of course, Pat Carroll playing a role that, for me, is very much almost like, almost anti-Ursula.
Well, it's kind of like your Garfield character. Well, it's kind of like your Garfield character.
Sure, it is. And then, of course, Dragon, we have Tim Daly.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed the English version of.
Superman himself.
We got Tim, and plus he gave him glasses. He looks he's a little mild.
I know he does look kind of Clark Kentish. Yeah.
Let's see. Go on.
Oh, I just wanted to point those two out.
So then we have the Fanning sisters, the Fanning cousins.
Yeah. Yes, sisters.
It's never cousins. It's always the sisters. Yes, we got. Let's see. We got. I don't botch your name because I know it's how it's spelled. But I believe the way we say in the movie, it's Satsuki.
Satsuki. Yeah.
Yes, Satsuki.
There's like an extra U in there that's not pronounced.
I know, right? Like you want to say Satsuki, but it's Satsuki.
Exactly. Yeah.
You got Satsuki. You got Satsuki and May. As the older sister and the younger sister. And. Yeah, I mean, the big thing the movie has going for it overall, especially in kind of our Act 1 thing. The problem is Act 1 kind of goes on a little long.
Act 1 absolutely goes on a little long, and I also find the climax to be just a wee bit underwhelming. We'll get there when we get there.
Well, sure. We'll definitely get there. That thing. So, like the little touches, and this is what Ghibli is known for, and Ghibli does so well, and it's kind of like the Pixar philosophy of we sand the undersides of the table or the undersides of the drawers. Where essentially it's all the little touches, like the little shoe removal gag, which it's honestly the way Ghibli animates movement is always something to marvel at. Just the fact that we have like real kid logic applied to this, and the fact that it was like an overseas studio that kind of taught us stateside. These little details we got to put in this work here. We have like the little girls walking on their knees because they can't, want to get their shoes on. It's like it's custom. You don't want to walk around with the shoes and everything on the inside of the house. And like the let's see. Sorry, I'm just trying to like the.
It's fine. We definitely get like a slow build of kind of like the supernatural elements.
Yeah, like for example, we have the camphor tree. The camphor tree is kind of like the central thing of the film here, where this is where Totoro is going to be introduced. It's kind of the hub, kind of the central hub almost for the forest spirits, the forest nature animal spirits, and we have like the soot sprites in the house that eventually leads to the camphor tree. You get the little acorns, and we're talking squirrels, not rats. They love those acorns. Yeah, but also how great are the landscapes in it? It's just beautiful.
Yeah, I mean that's like I said, it kind of reminds me of how E.T. sort of sucks you into the it's not exactly the same as E.T., but kind of like the similar vibe of like it's small scale in the same way that E.T. is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean some other little details too. I love how they're looking for the stairs that are hidden in the house. Like that's charming. They're looking for like the hidden stairway.
You know what one of my favorite little details is I really love the tunnel of trees that we keep going through to go in and out of the forest.
Yeah, that's great. I think it looks probably its best in the third act, but yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So I guess to kind of break a few of our characters down here a little bit here. Tatsuo, good father, and of course Tim Daly, very well cast. I love how the guy internalized it. I love how we conveyed that here, where he's actually listening to his kids, and he's not all stern and everything. He's not saying, "Oh, come on, don't be silly." He's like he's nurturing the imagination, which
I gotta tell you, Dragon, rewatching this movie, I was kind of thinking like, damn, like we need to do another animated dads list because this dude is killing it in that department.
he is great. I mean, my favorite gag with him, I love the whole "be the flower shop, Dad." Be the flower. I love that he smells a little flower. I mean, how great is that? He's like he's being that flower shop.
Yeah, I mean he's definitely as you said, he's definitely kind of like he's got the weight of the world on his shoulders. His wife is in the hospital. His girls are, like they're not really the most well adjusted to the situation. He's doing his best. So there's a lot of really subtle kind of layers to him as far as like putting on the brave face in spite of kind of like sometimes his situation being outwardly sort of very stressful.
Yeah. Should we mention Yasuko? Darn it. Sorry. The wife, the mother.
Yeah, I
Yasuko.
mean, there's not a lot to her. I think, we only see her for like two scenes. I do, in spite of the ending being a little underwhelming, just as far as like, I kind of think I kind of feel like the movie was building to something like
Hmm.
a little bit more fantastical than what we get. I do like the note that we end out on with her. I think that she's not really much of a character, but she's a really good plot device.
Yeah, she's an excellent plot device. I mean, what I like about her is, I like that they're having this realistic issue of of a mother with an illness, and she's really good. She's really present while she's there. And again, we're keeping it vague, like what's getting her down. And she seems fine, but clearly something's wrong there. And she's in kind of like, again, it's kind of the thing like we have the father putting on a brave face, and so is she. And it's
Mhm.
so the when Yasuko is introduced, this is where the movie kind of takes a turn that I think is interesting. But when we get to Act Three, I think kind of creates some issues. But we'll get there. Just overall, the movie is really good with recontextualization. In that, I feel there is a question of how much, if anything, is imagined versus what is actually there. There is ambiguity applied to all this, and I like that we have a logic established early on that adults can't really see what's going on here, and like they still respect the folklore though. It's like, it happened. Only children can really see this thing. It's really only whenever the spirits want you to be seen.
That's very true to form for real Japanese mythology. So, I mean, like you said, it very much kind of feels like, almost like a travelogue of that sort of stuff. It's almost kind of documentary like in some ways, very fly on the wall in some ways.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, we have like I like that there's like kind of a breadcrumb trail of like things that make you. So when I say recontextual, it's like we go through the movie, and we have these elements that are like, okay, when the mother's introduced, we have an aspect of, okay, this is kind of why the kids are kind of clinging on to something during this trying time, and they're being kind of enamored by essentially the lore, and it's kind of like giving them an outlet, with their imagination, so they can kind of take their mind off things, or at least kind of filter it through something hopeful.
Uh-huh.
So all that's interesting, and then we kind of get to a thing where we're then maybe literalizing it more than we should, and it gets a little iffy with the ambiguity. But again, we'll get there as we go further. But Pat Carroll, though, man, I love that. No matter what, she still kind of has that Ursula laugh. Whether it's
Yeah.
Granny here, whether it's Grandma from Garfield, or whether it's Ursula, it's just that Pat Carroll's got that laugh.
Richard, you're asking if Ponyo was a hit in the U.S. I mean, like it wasn't like a sensation the same way that Spirited Away or Princess Mononoke were, but it was definitely popular.
Everyone was talking about it because again, the idea of
Yeah,
like, hey,
yeah. I
Miyazaki did
believe it got nominated for Best Animated Film at the Oscars, so it definitely made an impact.
I mean, let's be honest. It was the big thing of like, oh god, we have another Little Mermaid and it's Japanese.
I think that I give that movie a lot more credit than just being another Little
No,
Mermaid.
no,
I
no.
think
I
this,
no, I agree, Teague. I'm just saying that
yeah.
was like the big cultural. That's why everyone was talking about Ponyo. That was where all the attention was going. Like, how do you dumb Ponyo down for the populace? Okay, well, it's Japanese Little Mermaid, so in a sense, we got another Little Mermaid. Yee. Yeah, let's see. So again, I like how we end it. Here's the thing: we Miyazaki has a kingship with how he brings children to life in the animated films. Now, it's for good and bad. 'Cause sometimes not all kids are great. It's in some
Well,
senses
I mean,
here.
like I said, even with it, like May is an understandably troubled little kid,
Hmm.
but I think they almost do too realistic of a job with her in some spots.
Yeah, yeah. Like for example, how do you feel about the scene where she goes to school with her, like for a beat?
Feels really superfluous, if I'm being honest.
I know it's superfluous. I mean, how do you like the scene, or does it just feel like why are we doing this completely?
That's what I'm saying, Dragon. It literally feels like you could cut it out of the movie
Hmm. Well,
because
honestly,
like literally all it is just like
we need to get her in the ring. That's the only reason.
right, exactly. Like I don't know.
And you know what's funny?
That was honestly probably the weirdest beat in the whole movie for me. And like you said, it does lead to like the most iconic set piece in the whole damn film. So
It's really
you
funny
can't
though.
exactly cut it. Go ahead. Sorry.
May's not even on the poster for that scene.
Yeah.
So
Oh, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, Dragon. That was another thing I was going to bring up in the background. That the image of the little girl with Totoro at the bus stop. That was, as you can imagine, a very early image
yeah,
that Miyazaki drew for the movie before they even solidified the story or anything. And for a long time, it was going to be just one girl. And the reason they decided to go with two girls was because they didn't want to have like the burden of, like a little girl waiting for the bus alone.
is that the only reason?
That's literally the only reason the other girl is there. Yes.
Give me
It
none
all
of the other
stems from the bus stop scene.
none of the other stuff. Not the plot point of like we need a little girl to run away. It's like literally just the bus
No,
stop.
because like I said, Dragon, like I said, it's like this image of the bus stop that it was one of the first things they conceptualized. So
I gotta
you know,
admit, I think that I don't think it's a good reason to have a little girl character. I don't think that's to add one.
well, I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, clearly Miyazaki is amassed far more success with the addition of this little girl. So who am I to judge? I'm just saying it's like you have like this profound image of little girl
May
monster.
also very much reminds me of Ponyo herself, to tell you the truth.
Look, I'm going to say so. This is not meant as an insult, but it's just kind of like it's just kind of a fact. Well, I guess it's an opinion, but let's just go with it here. Especially during the tadpole scene, which it really kind of clicked for me because I was looking at her face, and you're right. I think in the back of my mind, I was thinking Ponyo, but during that scene, it kind of occurred to me like, man, this girl's got a face like a frog.
Yup. I
With the
mean, that is just
tadpoles.
kind of like the Ghibli style to some extent when it comes to little children.
Yep. Anyway, but I don't know. It ultimately feels like it doesn't it feel more profound though if the girl is like alone at the bus stop and then this creature comes by to
I
kind of
hear you,
something.
Dragon. I hear you. I don't. I thought it was a little bit of a stupid reason too when I read it, but
Yeah. I feel it's not even that much of a criticism. It's more of just like a plea to like, hey, hi, old man, listen, like don't give yourself extra work here, okay? What you have is fine. Don't doubt yourself, buddy. It's okay. Just go with the one girl. You're okay. It's fine. Okay, you still do all your beats here. She'll run away upset. You don't need like the little frog girl. You're okay.
Right. I totally hear you. Like that's the thing. It's like in the third act, instead of having the little sister run away, just have the one girl run away.
Oh,
Literally, that's it's pretty much the same movie.
it's like hi. Think of these poor animators. They have to draw that other little girl.
I love how you're on a first name basis with Miyazaki
Yeah,
now.
yeah. Take it away. Like hi. Oh, come on.
Oh God.
I say Miyazaki's going to sound like I'm always mad at him.
All
Miyazaki.
right.
Anyway, so let's see. I guess okay. We should probably just get this out of the way. one weird scene always in the movie. I mean, I think it's weird, but it's a culture. It's a cultural. The bath scene's always been a little weird.
Oh God, yeah. Oh my God, so uncomfortable.
But again, it's a cultural thing. But again, this is the whole two-daughter thing.
Right, right.
It's kind of weird. But the laughing thing, out of context, the scene would freak anyone out. But I mean, in context, the message of laugh to get rid of your fear is kind of nice.
Oh,
I just wish we had a different.
I mean, if anything else, that scene is just a continuation of him being a good dad.
Exactly.
So
No, yeah,
give it a pass.
No, for sure, for sure. Let's see. I mean, we should also just kind of highlight this too. Atmosphere is really well captured in this film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Also,
I don't think it's like the pinnacle of Ghibli atmosphere, because I think that kind of comes more for his, more epic movies like Spirited Away and Mononoke.
well,
but
Tiki, you gotta walk before you can run.
Sure.
Yeah. In this case, we also have to learn how to ride our bike for the first time, which we have some bike riding here. So Miyazaki's love of vehicles is represented here because we're riding bikes. We got buses in the unconventional sense. We have a little homage with the plane, the boy. You should talk about, I believe, Kanta. Is that what that is? Yeah, Kanta.
Yeah, he is honestly probably my favorite character in the whole movie.
I like how that's what I'm talking about, the realistic kid animation here, where Kanta he's shy talking to the girl.
Right, like I really like. It's just a very nice, simple arc of going from like the bratty boy who doesn't want to talk to the girl to being the girl's friend. It's a nice. There's no actual romance with it, but there's a nice kind of kinship that develops over the movie.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I love the scene where he gives her the umbrella. It feels like a very realistic kid scene that you don't always see, because usually.
Oh yeah, totally. Where it's like he knows he wants to do something nice. He doesn't want to get the acknowledgement for doing something nice.
I think we've all been there. That's what I'm saying. You never see that represented. I thought that was a good call. Anyway, so it's a nice gesture with the umbrella, and then later on he's like playing, but he's like doing like a model plane thing. The plane's kind of a nod to Miyazaki's love of aircraft. So yeah, it's nice. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so let's talk. Okay, this is something important before we get back to the bridge into the big rain scene. We should talk about Totoro's introduction period.
Yeah, we should, because honestly, that is one of my favorite Totoro scenes. Just because, I don't know, man. I really love how naturalistic that scene plays out.
Yeah, so fundamentally, with the core of what you laid out in the background, Tiki. So Totoro's purpose in this film. Whole reason it's called My Neighbor Totoro. Fundamentally, I think the read on it is it's the relationship with it's a metaphor for the relationship with nature. As in, you treat with kindness like you would a neighbor, and it'll pay off in the long run. That's fundamentally what the movie is about. There's beauty. I think there's beauty in that logic, no question. You can only in the fact that you can only see the spirits when they want you to. So yeah, as we've kind of set up, and we just have like these nice little exchanges with Totoro, but it's not ham-fisted. Like Totoro's kind of scary,
A little bit, for sure, especially with like the sound effects.
Yeah, Totoro, he's it's a monster sound.
I think he's very much kind of like Pokemon probably took a lot of inspiration from him for Snorlax.
Yep. What if Snorlax were more active? He would be Totoro.
Right. Totally.
Yeah. So let's see. So it makes sense that the big advantage that you do have with May, the one runner she does have going for, but again, we don't fully capitalize on it. Again, in theory, we could probably give this to the other girl if we wanted to, but again, May, what she does have in her corner here is she's kind of the girl without fear, and the idea she goes up to this giant thing and roars at her, and she's not scared off by it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, again, it's kind of the relationship with nature here, which of course, like when we do that brings us to the big umbrella scene, which again is the hallmark of the whole film, which you do an act of kindness here, where you give this flawless one. The animation on the ring is flawless. Just to get that out of the way.
Yeah, I mean that whole sequence, like obviously, since it did kind of like come out of like it's sort of the genesis of the whole film. Like that sequence, clearly they probably spent more time on that sequence alone than they did anything else in the whole movie. I would think.
Yeah, just imagine like Miyazaki's kind of walking in the room and just kind of like
Miyazaki is a very intimidating Walt Disney type of figure in the offices, I would imagine.
I just imagine all the animators commiserating, and Hayao just kind of walks in, and he raises his hands, and they all go quiet, and he says, "We're doing the rain scene." And he walks out. They all hustle like, "Okay, we're doing the rain scene for about 2 months." Okay.
Oh god.
Let's see, but yeah, so the fact one they get this flawless just seen in the rain and everything, and of course we have like the umbrella gesture from the boy, and what we build to here is just this iconic shot of the film, and again a gesture of goodwill in which they see this creature and they give him an umbrella, something from their world, and payoff of this later, we establish the cat bus, and the more immediate gesture is he kind of repays them for the umbrella, like the little seeds.
Mhm.
Acorns and seeds and stuff in a little package. Steals well, he kind of basically bought their umbrella, I guess, but I don't know how you want to look at that. But yeah, so it's again, fundamentally, that's the relationship with nature is kind of like shown in one visual, which is great.
So the cat box,
Well,
but cat
yeah.
box. Jesus, I'm thinking of Schrodinger's cat.
Well, either that or like the lead scene from this film, I don't think any of us want to see.
Oh god. All right, so the cat bus, I mean, I would still say it's probably one of the all-time great Miyazaki creature designs.
I mean, I think the most you're right. It's an utterly brilliant design. You've seen the zoetrope of this thing, right?
I mean, not in person. I've probably seen video of it.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, the cool thing with the cat bus already, just aside from the design, is it's the fact that it's kind of like logic wise, it's kind of like an H.R. Giger sort of thing with the natural world in terms of like it's like you're mixing these two things that do not ordinarily mix, and you're putting them together in kind of this organic creature, the cat, with kind of an awesome vehicle, which is kind of this bus in mixture with the cat, which it can move any which way. And we use all these other natural things to give you the effects and the selling points of a bus. Like for some reason, the cat has like mice or rats on it that have lights that are like the bus lights, and the way the door forms, the interior. Oh, how great is the interior?
Oh, dude! I mean, the interior is like that's what you live for, right? Even though conceptually, the interior is a little bit disturbing to think about.
Well, I mean,
it looks so damn comfy, though.
When you think, when you think about if you think about it before you see it, before you actually get on the inside of this thing, you're thinking, "Oh God, how horrible! What an awful idea being inside a sentient cat that is a bus. What Rick and Morty malevolence
But no,
is.
once you're actually in there, you're like, oh my god, dude, this is legit.
I don't know how this works.
I can hang out here.
I don't know how this works. I don't want to know how this works. I just want to enjoy the ride.
There is a Miyazaki, like, it's not necessarily, they call it a theme park. I would call it more of like an interactive art installation more than anything else. But there is a full-size cat bus there that you could go into.
Wait, really?
Yes.
There's a full-size Miyazaki cat bus.
Yes.
Where? Where again?
Somewhere in Japan. It's a Studio Ghibli theme park.
There's a Ghibli theme park in Japan.
Yeah, but like I said, Dragon, it's less of a traditional theme park and more of like an interactive museum art installation kind of thing.
That sounds really cool.
I'm sure it is really cool, yeah. It's just it doesn't, there's no like traditional dark rides or anything like that there. You know what I mean?
I love how the eyes on this thing work. I love his like spotlights for eyes because they can move.
And just like the permanent smile on him too. Very Cheshire Cat like in that regard.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to imagine he's probably drawn direct influence from the Alice in
You would think so, yeah. Especially like he's got kind of like the color scheme of the original Tenniel Cheshire Cat.
Let me ask you this. Given, because you gotta remind me, I mean, Miyazaki, he had reverence for Disney, right? Because I know he had reverence for
big time.
But I gotta wonder if assuming he had reverence for Disney, as you said, you gotta imagine he's looking to Alice in Wonderland, the Alice comedies and stuff. Just in general, like Alice in Wonderland is conceptual, even as the book itself, for like a lot of this, with like little girl and kind of when she goes into these sections of the film, we have like
I honestly kind of have more Alice in Wonderland vibes from Spirited Away myself.
well, that one I think, but even as a testing ground for Spirited Away,
Sure,
as like the building blocks that go full tilt with it. I mean, do you think we're evoking a little bit of it so we can go full tilt with it in Spirited Away?
I mean, I don't want to just say that he just, took Alice in Wonderland and drew from it, but like I'm sure there was some Disney inspiration in this film, just generally speaking. I honestly think it's less one given film and more just the overall style of Disney that he was going for. Honestly, Dragon, if I were to name one film that, like, a Disney film that this probably takes inspiration from, this is going to sound like a weird comparison, but I would probably say Bambi. Just because Bambi's animation is so naturalistic, and the forest in that movie is pretty much the main character. But again, it's an interesting kind of like, you got kind of like the naturalism of Bambi, but you've also got like the surrealism of something like Alice. So it definitely is like, I just don't want to say that Miyazaki, like, took inspiration too heavily from any one film.
Well, I'm not saying he took. I'm not saying he's like trying to like do like literally lampoon it or anything. But yeah,
sure.
I think just like I don't know. Anyway,
we all know that's Disney's job when it comes to Kimba the White Lion.
Okay. Anyway,
I'm not kidding, obviously.
Okay, so
you have been lied to.
Okay, so transitioning to Act 3 here, and so here's where I want to bring up the ambiguity factor here. So the ambiguity is great, but I feel we push the logic a bit much as we kind of like as we enter Act 3.
Honestly, I feel like the end of the movie, it's pretty much like the ambiguity is kind of faded away, and we're kind of left with like, okay, this definitely happened. There's literally no explanation for this not happening.
Because here's why it kind of throws me off, because in Act 2 we have the it does take a while for us to introduce Totoro, which again with the runtime of Act 1 makes me wonder, like, we kind of took a while to get to our namesake character. It's a little
it is a short movie too.
That's the thing. But regardless, when we do the tree scene, the idea they get the seeds for the umbrella, the girls, they grow a giant tree, and then the next morning, realistically, they have grown, like these little sproutlings, little like it's starting to grow.
I love the animation of like the giant bonsai tree in the dream.
Yeah. So this is what I'm saying. So we have a dream, which is very fantastical, all that sort of stuff, playing off what the father said, encouraging the imagination, the forest spirits and everything. And then reality is like, okay, so something did happen, but clearly we did not have the giant, like Jack and the Beanstalk size bonsai tree, that happened. We didn't go that far with it. So to me, that establishes the reality of, okay, the spirits aren't being taken literally. It's in the imagination here, but it's in conjunction with what's happening in real life. So basically, to me, that scene was initially a confirmation about what was going on. Now, of course, you could say it's up to interpretation, which is the fact we saw a giant tree, but it was at night and they did go to bed, and then they got out of bed and did this sort of thing. So like, how much is like Snoopy like going to the Easter egg display looking at the thing,
Right.
So that's what I mean. I that was my assumption. I think that's pretty that's pretty solid evidence for what's going on there. And then we get to our third act, which is great, but then we have like the practical question of like, how does a little girl get from point A to point B with the bus to all these locations?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think too hard about it. My whole
you don't have to think about it too hard.
Well, my whole thing with it though is I always just kind of thought the finale was like a little underwhelming. It's like, I don't know. I like watching the movie. I always kind of feel like it's building up towards something a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about what you expected to build to.
Well, I guess what I was expecting was like to see more of the actual fantasy world, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because, like you have the scene where Totoro goes on the cat bus and the cat bus drives away, and I'm kind of thinking like, okay, like we're eventually going to see where the cat bus takes him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we have a scene where like they're chasing after him. It's like, Totoro, it's my dad's umbrella. He's gonna be mad. Totoro, get back here.
Oh
Yeah,
God.
yeah, hamster SOB, get back here.
I don't know. I don't know exactly what I was expecting, but I just, again with the ET thing, I just feel like this movie it's beautiful, but it's very small scale.
Well, I have a neat. I think I have an idea of what you may or may not have. I don't know what was going through your mind. I have an ET example. I think might be akin to what you're looking for here.
Okay.
So, for me, what I was expecting that didn't happen. So it's been a while since I watched this. Like you, I think this might have been my second or at most third, if any, probably second time I've seen this. It feels, it's going to sound weird. A part of me feels Miyazaki may have wrote himself into a corner of sorts here with the Yasuko thing with the mother. Because, it's kind of like Chekhov's gun. In this case, it's Chekhov's mom.
So you were expecting the mother to actually die?
Either die or go in the ET route, gets sick, and then we would either literalize, like have the forest spirits thing heal her.
You have to save her, Totoro.
So that's what I'm saying. So something. My main thing was that the main thing I was realistically expecting was we were gonna.
What if like Totoro sacrificed himself to save the mother or something?
Well, that's another interesting idea, Teague. I mean, primarily my thought process was okay. We were going to experience actual loss here, and we were going to kind of sweeten it with kind of the imagination of what was going on here, and go into like kind of a circle of life.
Now, remember, this movie was very specifically designed to be counter-programming to Grave of the Fireflies.
Well, now I know that. I didn't know that.
Well, like, I don't know. I really don't think Miyazaki was ever going to put an actual dead parent in this movie, given that.
Okay, but even so, I'm just saying you set up sick parent, and it feels a bit like a cop out. Like, oh, she just had a cold. Like, that's a bit of a cop out. You got it.
Okay, but Dragon, do you remember the movie Wonder Park? I know you probably never saw it, but do you remember?
Yeah, I remember it.
So that movie, Dragon, that movie is a piece of shit sham when it comes to like the dead parent or the sick parent who suddenly gets better out of nowhere. All right, Totoro is fine in that regard if you compare it to that.
I'm saying though, you think on the phone or during this telegram is like, hey, she's got a cold, so she can't come over.
So I actually kind of like the fact that the conflict in the third act basically comes from kind of like a miscommunication / overreaction on the kid's part. I think that's realistic to being a kid, and how every little piece of bad news feels like it's the end of the world sometimes.
You're not wrong, but let me put it this way: we get into kind of Florida Project territory with the way that goes.
How so?
Well, I mean, it's in terms of it's going to be kind of a weird comparison. Like, with the Florida Project, is that we kind of get to a place where
because when I think My Neighbor Totoro, I definitely think the Florida Project.
Well, my point.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
My point is the Florida Project has that ending where things go to crap, and then we end in a way that's ambiguous, but suggesting that these little girls they actually ran to the park, but more likely they were imagining they're trying to go into this happy place while everything's falling apart around them. So I guess what I'm saying is the way that kind of builds to a crescendo on that story, where in here I guess maybe it's a question of like, do we want that as our climax, or do we want that as just something that happens in the movie? And I guess the way it ends, it turns out being is it is a good lesson to have. It's a good lesson to have, and it's an accurate lesson to have. It is true to life, but it feels like we kind of lose the lesson somewhat.
I feel you.
And I guess what I'm saying is there are a number of directions it could have taken. I mean, one, you could have done actual loss, but again, seeing what Miyazaki was going for, I understand why he didn't do that. But that's why it feels like you set up something really, okay, mother is sick, happy stuff going on, and we're going to have these two things clash with each other. And we don't really have them clash with each other. And you think, like, okay, if we're going to literalize things with the cat bus, perhaps the four spirits have a hand in actually helping the sick mother, either in a sacrificial act or just helping her, like, just because cat bus magic.
Sure.
So it's the fact that it just feels a little easy at the end of the day for me with the way.
No, I do not disagree with you at all, Dragon. That's the thing. I've always kind of felt like the wrap up of this movie was a little bit like it kind of like an abrupt, they all lived happily ever after almost.
It's conflicting though, because the movie, you don't want to force drama on a movie. This is a movie that was
Especially, like I said, especially one that's directly like made to counter one of the darkest animated movies ever made.
Yeah, exactly. Because of that, too, it's a movie that is made primarily to be the antithesis of a film with conflict, which is such a unique. It's such a unique thing to have with a movie, because we're always looking for excuses for conflict. Sometimes we're sensationalizing it. Sometimes we're not sensationalizing it. And I don't know. It's just kind of. It's just really interesting and kind of a rare thing. It just feels like a unique position to be put in, where, like, no, it's just a happy-go-lucky movie. Really, for the whole runtime, like, there's not really a conflict. But then we have that really great scene with our Pat Carroll granny character, in which, like, we're going through the girls fearing the loss of their mother, which it's kind of hard to put the genie back in the bottle after we go there with that. And then we have this amazing sequence of the cat bus saving the day. It's the high of highs in the movie. It's probably the best thing.
Like, I don't even. That's the thing, though. I don't even think it's the high of highs of the movie, because I feel like the bus stop scene was kind of like the most like memorable, magical scene in the movie, and so for that reason too, the third act kind of feels a little bit underwhelming. That's kind of what I'm saying, as far as like it felt like we were building to something bigger, but we really weren't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think honestly, it's more like the stand. It's the high of highs. The rain scene's the high of highs for, I think, more so the animation fans. But I mean, it's a centerpiece of the film either way it's sliced. Even if we're not appreciating the animation, but yeah, I don't know. I think the emotional high of highs kind of is that cat bus scene, though, because we're like the girls like kind of at, like. It's like the most warm and fuzzy Deus Ex Machina you've ever seen. Like,
Totally.
literally, cat bus. Take me to May, and it takes her to May. We need to go to the hospital, and turns to hospital. Oh my god, the cat bus can really do anything.
I know, right?
I gotta say though, I really appreciate. And I know I'm not saying this is not the first time we've ever done this, but because it's definitely drawing influence from Miyazaki in the first place. Luca, the end credits of this film are so darn chipper. It's very reminiscent of what we did with Luca, so you're kind of seeing where Luca's
the end credits of this film are incredibly chipper, yes.
And seriously, it's the fact.
Thing, yeah.
Again, not the first time we've ever had. Like, okay, here's essentially kind of the epilogue done in kind of like painted stills.
Right.
It's like Luca, like, okay, here's what the two friends are doing while separated, and then it's like we're seeing like, hey, mom's back, the good times, and with Totoro making a snow Totoro. Isn't that cute?
Fun fact that I kind of forgot to bring up in the backstory. There's actually a 16-minute sequel to this film that Miyazaki directed, but it's probably on YouTube somewhere. It's never been officially released on home video, and the only place you can officially see it is the Miyazaki or Studio Ghibli Museum.
Huh.
Which I imagine somewhere in Japan. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. And it just stars May. The Dakota Fanning's character isn't in it. It's just May. Probably an older version of May. I think it's kind of like a Christopher Robin sort of like. I don't think she's like, grown up. I don't think she's an adult, but I do think it's kind of like a years later kind of setup. Anyways.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think that's we just kind of end on we leave the corn, and that's kind of our big ambiguous note. Like, did it really happen? I mean, they were there.
Right.
They left the corn. I mean, it wasn't just like it wasn't like an imagined thing. I guess
corn is a plot device in this movie, like ham is a plot device in Ponyo.
Really, ham and Ponyo? Yeah, it was ham.
Have you not seen Ponyo?
No, I've seen Ponyo. I remember it was like.
Oh my god, Dragon! They obsess over the ham. Ham is a big deal in Ponyo.
I remember it was ham. It was that big a deal. It was like it was like the corn thing. It was.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it was. I would not say it's as plot significant as the corn, but I will say it probably has more screen time than the corn. Like ham is like it's like the fucking like. It's like Ponyo's thing, dude.
Big thing where like she just screams like ham.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a big character trait of hers.
I forgot that was. I remember she said ham. I forgot that we kind of kept it coming back, but that's okay. So yeah, I mean, well, we end on corn and we end on ham, and it's like a deli of a Miyazaki Miyazaki retrospective we got going on here. But yeah,
All right. Well, yeah, as far as final thoughts go, man, I really do feel like if I grew up with this movie, I'd appreciate it a lot more. I just didn't. The first time I saw it, I was like in my early 20s. So, like even back then, I was kind of looking at it more from like an animation appreciation perspective more than anything else. It is a very, very childlike movie and it has its strengths there. It's just when it comes to Miyazaki, I'm always going to gravitate more towards his kind of like more bold adult work like Mononoke. But again, like Dragon, me, I'm still coming off of the high of seeing Mononoke from the first time. So all right. Dragon, if you don't remember the ham obsession, I think you were asleep during Ponyo. Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I got too.
I don't go back to Ponyo. Okay, I watched it
that's
once.
Fair. That's
all
fair.
Right, it was many years ago. I'm not crazy. Frankly, I'm not crazy about Ponyo. It's okay.
Richard's Victims also says, I wanted a sky beam in relationship to the third act, I'm guessing. Yes, you're absolutely right, Richard's Victims. In the live action remake that we're bound to get of this, I am sure that we're going to have a sky beam in the finale. All right, final thoughts, Dragon.
Although it's again Totoro, it definitely earns its reverence. It's in a very unique space because again it is counterintuitive to a lot of things that we're so accustomed to with not just animated films, just movies in general. But there's something special about it, something unique about it. I mean, there's always just something appealing about it because I can't tell you how many times I go into a place that has like like Miyazaki stuff, and like the Totoro stuff's always just like it's at the top of the heap. But it's. Damn, there's just something. It's just something kind of nice and slice of life about this. And again, it does kind of mentioning it. I mean, there is kind of like it does set the framework for how we're able to get kind of where we're at with Pixar now and some things like with the Luca look that we're going for with certain things. Which has like a lot of Miyazaki qualities. Again, like Miyazaki's its approach to slice of life and getting all the little finer details on things. I'm not saying I know it's an early film, it's not the first film, but just in general, it's like this one really popularized, at least made the first splash before we then got everyone's attention with Spirit Away. Everyone's like looking to this in the little details, and like it's how we get like a Steven Universe, and that's how we get all these other things with Miyazaki touches, and we're just it's just I just like the idea. Fundamentally, it's this simple story about. These girls kind of dealing with kind of a situation with their mother and just kind of going to the Japanese countryside, and it's just it's a nice little leisure piece. Ultimately, it's
sure.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if Miyazaki got everything he was looking for in this movie. Given it was an early attempt, and he's probably still a little green at things, but I think it's a darn good attempt. I don't think it's as masterful as what he does with Porco Rosso. That's just my opinion. But it is it's a great stepping stone. It's kind of the great it's the great poster for Ghibli. We make great things here.
Totally. It was a good calling card, if anything else.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Well, big thanks to Richard's Victims for joining us in the chat. And we will see you all later. Have a good night, everyone. Cat Bus!
Roll.